to our May Biophilia. It's hard to believe it's already May.
I know.
Crept up. And thanks for all of you coming out tonight. A little bit on a rainy evening. Hear a little bit of traffic out there with an event going on. And we're also setting up for our May market. That's tomorrow and Saturday. We haven't been to that before. For those of you that haven't come before, I'm Emily Kalnicki. I'm the Director of the Science Education and Research Department here at Phipps. And out of curiosity, how many of you this is your first time here? Awesome. Well, welcome. So tonight, this evening, we have two presenters who I will introduce. We have a grounding exercise with Susan Spangler. And generally, we have question and answer after the presentation till about 7 o'clock. And then I welcome everyone that in a large group, we kind of end the presentation at that time and then welcome the conversation to continue. Because really the Biophilia meetup, the whole idea is to have some thought-provoking ideas about connecting to nature and the environment and inspire conversation. How can we take what's happening that's already action and research components, but how can we take that and what are we already doing, all of you already doing in the communities to kind of inspire that conversation. So before we get started tonight, just a couple announcements I wanted to mention. We have started an environmental film series here also at Phipps. The next one will be on May 20th, so it's the third Friday of every month. And the idea being generally documentary films with bringing in either a scientist or the producer of the film to guide a question and answer and kind of discussion after. So similar to the kind of an extension of the Biophilia meetup idea. The next film will be fossil free, and our own Director of Sustainability and Facilities, Jason Wyrick, will help lead the discussion along with a member of the Pittsburgh 350.org. So welcome all of you to that. 7 to 9 p.m. and it will be in our Bauman Hall. So you actually will enter through the Welcome Center up at the main entrance and pick up your tickets there. The other quick announcement you may have noticed today, the artwork outside of the CSL, this classroom, is our Environmental Change Challenge. It's one of a middle and high school program that we offer here at Phipps. It's a school year program, and we have a series of challenges that the students participate in with their teachers. And there's up to 6 challenges, both for middle and high school students. And at the end of the year, those that participated in all the different challenges, they're expertly judged. We have volunteers that are experts in different fields that judge the entries, award points, and then the leading schools are awarded money toward an environmental project at their school. So we're really excited. There's comic strips. So this was actually a global challenge. We're one of many satellite partners. The challenge originated in Fairchild Tropical Botanical Garden in Miami. And as you may have noticed, they're comic strips and they're all about environmental change. So I encourage you to take a chance if you didn't before. They will be up there for a number of months. We also have a chance if you come back next month to our Biophilia presentation. So without further ado, I'm very excited and honored to be able to introduce our two speakers this evening. Gabe Tilove has been our adult education coordinator here at Phipps for the past 5 years, where he works at the intersection of people, plants, and sustainability. He has an environmental studies degree from Ramapo College. He also has a small Ford Ranger and 2 cats. Charity Grimes Bauman has been the community outreach coordinator at Phipps, coordinating Homegrown since its first season in 2013. She has an environmental science degree from Goshen College and is an avid home vegetable gardener. So both Gabe and Charity will be talking about Phipps Homegrown Program, which has been working since 2013 to help Homewood residents grow fresh vegetables in their backyards. Beyond the physical infrastructure they provide, they put a strong emphasis on skill building, creating communities of gardeners, and improving a community's garden resources, all with an eye towards helping residents become confident, self-sufficient gardeners. With over 90 homes, and I've heard close approaching actually 100, Homewood recently completed a professionally assisted program evaluation. Gabe and Charity tonight will provide an overview of the program, as well as sharing the impacts and lessons gleaned from the evaluation, and discuss the decision to take a community-based approach for this program in their presentation, Addressing Health and Food Security Through Home Vegetable Gardens. So join me in welcoming Gabe and Charity. Prior to that, join me in welcoming Susan to provide us with the grounding exercise this evening.
So again, welcome everyone. We get to enjoy beginning our evening with having a chance to fully arrive, actually, to let go of the worries of the day, the activities of the day, and to just feel ourselves fully here. So one way of fully arriving is to take a really deep breath together and letting it go. And as you let go, just letting the body fully relax, feeling the body in the chair, the feet on the floor, taking another big breath together. And as you breathe out, just letting go with the out breath. And one more, breathing in deeply. With the out breath, letting go, just letting yourself relax and be here. And as you feel yourself more fully here, letting yourself enjoy simply the feeling of the soles of the feet on the ground, supported by the earth. Yourself feel the weight of your body in that chair. The feeling of the body breathing. And actually for just a moment, letting your mind just rest on the feeling of the body breathing. It's such a treasure just to let yourself just be here, not having to do. So simply letting the mind rest on the feeling of the breath as the body breathes itself. As thoughts come, letting them come, and also letting them go. And again, simply feeling the experience in the body of the body breathing. Just for another moment. And while you continue to breathe naturally, letting the body relax. If your eyes are closed, you might open your eyes. If the gaze is down, just lifting the gaze and letting the eyes receive color, form. And as you continue to enjoy the feeling of the body breathing, you can know that you can just let yourself receive what Gabe and Charity have to offer. So, Gabe.
Thanks, Susan, for that start. I was sharing with Susan before earlier tonight that I actually grew up going to Quaker schools, and their worship is it's a weekly meaningful worship where everyone comes and gathers silently for an hour. If someone has something to share, they stand up and share it, and there's no reaction. Everyone just sits back and is quiet, and have really gotten away from it in my adult life, but it's nice to sort of find an opportunity to come back to it. Alternative, sort of on sort of the other foot, sometimes before these presentations I drink a cup of coffee, so I'm full energy. This is maybe maybe a little more subdued after that introduction. Thank you all for coming. Charity and I are going to kind of switch back and forth here to give you an overview of our Homegrown program. It's a program we care deeply about and are excited to share and hear your feedback. As Emily said in the introduction, we launched in 2013, and we're interested in putting together a program whose goals were to improve healthy food access in Pittsburgh's low-income neighborhoods, promote better food choices, and improve overall health, and build community around gardening. We decided to launch in Homewood. Homewood is what people term a food desert. And just out of curiosity, who here is familiar with the term food desert? Okay, so a majority of you. It's really about food access, and that can be a geographic issue where a grocery store or other place to get fresh produce is simply too far away. It can also be, it's not that far away, but someone doesn't have a vehicle. It can also be economic access. Fresh vegetables can be expensive. And so there are a variety of things that create places in our communities where people don't often have access to fresh produce, and Homewood is one of them. There was it helped, we were supported in that by a 2011 study by RAND, which showed that there was low fresh food access of 14 neighborhood food stores. None of them had fresh fruits or vegetables. 24 restaurants and bars, you can see here. Also, 40% of people surveyed, it was a large survey, experienced running out of food and not having enough money to buy more. So that's another that's a food security issue. We also know from that study that Homewood residents experience high levels of diet-related diseases. So we felt like this was a good neighborhood to forge forward with our gardening program. One thing to note, since we launched the program, there actually has been some movement around access to fresh vegetables in the neighborhood, not just through Homegrown. There is now a store that regularly has fresh produce. There's also a farm truck foods sets up in Homewood on a semi-regular basis. So access is improving. One of the things to note, as we'll talk a little bit about, is what happens when a culture hasn't had access to fresh foods for a long time. How does that change their food ways? And so even if fresh food becomes available, if someone doesn't know what it is, know what it tastes like, know how to prepare it, or it's part of their sort of regular canon of what they cook, is it going to be readily adopted? So part of this is about access, and part of this is about cultural learning.
So a look here at what our programming looks like. So the approach we decided to take was home vegetable gardens and using gardening as a way to increase access to fresh produce. So we install household vegetable gardens at people's homes, front yard, backyard, side yard, wherever they have space. They get 2 raised beds from us, and then we also provide mentorship and education and resources to fully support them. So it's a 2-year program, so we offer support for 2 full years, 2 full growing seasons to get people started off right. And in the first year, they receive the raised bed building supplies, and we come out and we do the installation for them. They get soil, seeds, and plants. Everything is free of charge, as well as some garden tools. We get them a watering can and garden gloves and spades. Everything they need, and then also follow-up visits, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And then in the second year, we come back to their gardens in the spring. We're in the midst of this now, adding compost to their beds in the spring, and then over the summer, we'll also get them a compost bin. So the hope is that in future years, then they'll be able to produce compost on their own. For sort of a long-term sustainability right in their backyards. They also get seeds and plants again the second year, as well as those continued follow-up visits where we come out and check in on them and see how things are going.
So the reason that we use raised beds is because we're concerned with soil contamination in the city. We could test the soil in every different yard and different locations, but instead of doing that, we decided to just go with raised beds. Our beds are pretty tall. They're 16 inches deep, which is deep enough for most vegetable roots. So we're bringing in fresh, clean soil for them to garden in. And there's oftentimes, in this city, there's oftentimes lead contamination or other heavy metals that we're worried about, and that's just not something you want to grow things to eat in. And raised beds have other benefits too. Compacted soil is also often an issue in the city and backyards where it's heavily trafficked. That can be an issue. We fill them with a 50-50 mix of compost and soil, so they're really rich soil to grow in, easy to control weeds, good drainage, and easy to manage and reach too. We have a variety of people in our program, but for especially some of the senior citizens, they really appreciate being able to sort of sit on the edge of the beds and they can still garden. They don't have to get the whole way down to the ground. And for kids too, it sort of brings it up to eye level to interact with the garden.
What we do would not be possible without community partnerships. Two of our primary partners are the Homewood YMCA and Pittsburgh Job Corps. Homewood, the YMCA was really a first point of contact for us. They are in the center of the neighborhood, have a lot of community connections. They were great advocates for us. Up until they started construction on their building this spring, we had all of our monthly education classes there. People could, even if people got an application from us at an event, they could drop it off at the YMCA. They also have a garden, which Charity will talk a little bit more about. We also work with Pittsburgh Job Corps, which is a federal job training facility in the area for 16 to 24-year-olds. They have a facilities maintenance program where they learn woodworking, and so they actually help build a number of our raised beds in their classes, and then they come out and help with several installations throughout the spring. In the beginning, it was when we were a tiny program, it was we needed every last hand we could. We still need help, but it's also a great opportunity for them to take what they're learning in the classroom and see how it's actually impacting the community. So they're a great audience to work with also. We have a lot of additional partners too, and I've got a number listed here. I'm going to highlight just a few. The Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh has been a partner this year. There is a public housing facility in Homewood called Homewood North, where it's primarily townhouses, so people have small front yards and backyards. So we were able to create an MOU with them that we could put garden beds in people's backyards. And so we did, I think, 17 gardens in the public housing facility this past year. So that was a terrific partnership, and we'll be continuing that. We're also working with the Urban League, which pioneered a program last year where they are doing cooking classes between teenagers, Boy Scouts, and the seniors at Silver Lake, which is a senior facility in Homewood, trying to promote intergenerational learning, as well as they bring in outside chefs to help teach the old timers how to update their recipes to be a little bit healthier, as well as teaching cooking skills to youth. And for them, they were really interested in kind of completing the circle and having a gardening component that they could pull from for their classes and their events. And so we're going to be building them a garden this spring. Lastly, Operation Better Block, the community development organization in Homewood. We've helped with cleanup days. They also have a junior green corps that we're connecting with. So the lesson of the partnership with Operation Better Block is we found in dialogue with them that there are other ways that we can support them, not just through Homegrown, but other resources through Phipps or other things we can bring to the table and help support both of our larger missions. And for us, that has been a real benefit from taking a community-focused approach. We could have launched this over several neighborhoods, but we felt focusing on one gave us an opportunity to build deeper relationships. And those deeper relationships, I would say, are now starting to bear fruit where people know us, they trust us, they understand what skill sets we have, and we have a much better and more nuanced sense of what skill sets these organizations have. And so we're able to to do things that have greater impact because of those relationships. And so we're really pleased with the level of depth that we've been able to achieve in Homewood and will continue to.
So as I mentioned, we do education as well. So as well as sort of building that physical infrastructure, safe places to garden, we also want to make sure that people have the skills and the knowledge and the support that they need to sort of be successful gardeners for a long time, many years into the future. And so we approach that a couple different ways. One is through monthly workshops, which have every month we meet and we focus on a different gardening topic. We talk about seed saving, seed starting, dealing with pests, composting, all different sorts of gardening topics. And we've been, like Gabe said, holding those at the YMCA. This year we're holding those at the Homewood CCAC building. But the picture here is in the garden at the YMCA. So they also have a raised bed garden right on site, which we use to do as much hands-on learning and demonstrations in our classes as we can as well. And those meetings too have become sort of also just a social space, a time to meet other gardeners in the program and to talk about how their gardens are going. And it's felt sort of like a garden club as well, which we'll talk more about too. But yeah, garden classes every month, and then we also have done some cooking classes, which is what the other photo is from. So we've done cooking in the fall or early winter before, trying to give people ideas of ways to use fresh produce. And this year we're planning to add some more cooking classes during the main season as well, in addition to those monthly classes. So just giving, again, opportunity to learn new recipes and new ways to work with produce from their gardens. Just another photo here of the YMCA garden, which is right across the street from the CCAC, so we'll still be able to use that this year. And another approach is individual mentorship. So we do follow-up visits with every household at least once each growing season. So we actually go back out to their gardens, see how it's going, check in with them, address any issues that they might be having. It's just a good chance to see people's individual gardens at their own space and try and help them out. We've been going out also having master gardeners helping us with that, Phipps master gardeners, to offer their expertise as well.
As Sherry mentioned earlier, a big piece of our mission is to cultivate sustainability. We want to be in Homewood for as long as we can, but we know as funding goes, we may have to refocus elsewhere. And even if we do stay in Homewood, we want to make sure that the people who we get started gardening have success long term and don't need us to be in the middle of everything. So we've taken a few approaches to help achieve that. One of the big transitions is we're transitioning from monthly garden classes to more of a garden club model that meets on a monthly basis. Within that, we're trying to build paths to leadership for a lot of the regulars. So we do have folks that come every month and are highly engaged with us. So how do we help them become more active parts of the program, helping to direct what we focus on each month, helping to check people in, helping to introduce the speaker, creating more of a garden club feel, and as well as increasing the emphasis on the social component. There is certainly an educational piece to the monthly meetings, but we also want it to be a central gathering place so people can share information amongst each other and connect with other gardeners. In connection with that, we're also starting a membership program. So it's a homegrown membership program with a few different goals. One is to help incentivize new gardeners to come to monthly garden club meetings. So if they never come, they can't connect in with this community. And so by coming, they can earn access to our membership. In addition, for people who have already been coming and maybe been through our 2 years of the program, we wanted to find ways that membership could be valuable to them. And so even after they're done, they're going to need access to different garden resources. And so the membership gives them discounted access to seedlings, compost, mulch, tools, an educational newsletter, as well as tickets to Phipps. One of the ways we're distributing seedlings is through a homegrown seedling sale. You can see we have a couple of dates coming up in May. Homewood residents get a discount, but also if you are a homegrown member, you're going to get an additional coupon for seedlings. So we don't want finances to be a barrier for people growing each spring. We're also looking at how we're producing those seedlings. Right now, we produce all the seedlings for the program on-site at Phipps Garden Center, which is our educational center in Mellon Park. But this spring, we worked with the YMCA, and the woman on the left is Hannah Mosca. She's the YMCA garden coordinator, and they had a locker room that wasn't being used, and so we set up 2 big shelves, filled them with fluorescent lights, and they were able to produce 1,000 seedlings there this spring. Part of that 1,000 they're going to use for their garden on site, the garden the charity showed you. They were spending a lot for seedlings for that, so this is a way to help offset some of those costs for them. But then the rest of the seedlings are going to be distributed and sold to the community at a discounted rate. So the idea is that the YMCA is going to be there forever. This is a program it doesn't cost a whole lot after the infrastructure has been set up. And so we don't necessarily have to be in the middle of this thing going forward, that inexpensively produced seedlings will continue to be grown in Homewood and be available to residents. Homegrown membership also gives you access, a discounted access to the Garden Resource Center, which is a tool lending library and resource depot through Grow Pittsburgh, and it's located in the Larmer neighborhood of Pittsburgh, which is right next to Homewood, so it's close, it's accessible. And in addition to tool rentals, they have compost, they have mulch, which are things that people need on an annual basis. So it works on a membership model. You get a membership, and then you have access to all of those things free of charge. And so once people can show their Homegrown membership card, get discounted access, and then be able to supply their own garden for the full season. Here's an example of what they offer. Anyone can become a Garden Resource Center member, by the way, so check it out. We also work with Grow Pittsburgh to help organize a seed swap every spring. So this is actually at in Oakland at the Carnegie Library. It's open to everyone, so it's not just Homewood residents, but it's a great way to meet other gardeners and get. You can bring seedlings and take whatever you want, or you can just show up and pick from an assortment of seedlings. We have seed starting workshops. We have master gardeners on hand to help answer garden questions. So the idea is just to make resources as easily available as possible.
So a look at the impact that we've been able to have over the past couple years. First, just some general numbers. So these are through the end of 2015. We're just getting started with our 2016 season. So these are through the end of last year. But we have 92 households participating in the program in Homewood, over 2,700 square feet of growing space that we created. Last year we installed the same garden setup that residents get at their homes at the Phipps Garden Center, and planted and tended that garden and weighed all of our produce to get an idea of what people can get out of their gardens. And so we got about 60 pounds of produce over the course of the season. We also hold season end celebrations, so every year in, I'm trying to remember, August or September, we have a harvest celebration potluck with our participants, and people bring food to share, and it's just a chance to celebrate the season all together. And we've also distributed and helped plant 2,500 daffodil bulbs in the neighborhood. So every fall we've planted daffodil bulbs at people's homes, our participants' homes, as well as at community partner sites, and given our participants bulbs to share with their neighbors as well. So just a way to add some beauty to their space and some of that first spring color. So this is a map of Homewood. This is 2013, so there's 3 sections to Homewood, but they're all part of the neighborhood. In 2013, this was our pilot year, and we did 10 garden installations. And then the following year, in 2014, we did a few more. We added 20 new gardens to the mix for a total of 30. And then last year, we received funding to really expand the program, and we added 62 more gardens in the 2015 season. So all of the yellow diamonds there are last year's installs for that total of 92. And you can see there's a lot of sort of clusters around the map. That's our best outreach method is word of mouth. So people sign up, they participate, they like their garden, and they let their neighbors know, which we like to see, and sort of creates these little micro garden communities also.
As Emily mentioned in the introduction, we did go through a more formal evaluation process, trying to figure out what our impacts are and also how we can improve the program. So I just want to highlight a few of those things. We did see increased access, so a decrease in perceived barriers of cost, having access to good quality, and knowing how to prepare fresh vegetables. So the way this works is the gray is pre-2015, so this is before they received their garden beds, we did a survey, and then the green is post in 2015, so we caught up with them again in the fall after having the garden for that year. And so in the lines where the green is lower than the gray, people saw a decreased barrier. So for example, before 54% saw cost as a barrier to eating more fresh vegetables. After, only 38% saw that as a barrier. So we're seeing an improvement there. It was interesting to see the two where we did not improve, where one was they go bad, and I think in some ways that's a testament to the program. It's like, I have so many vegetables, I'm having trouble keeping them all good. And then also time to prepare, which is sort of similar. People, if they have lots of produce, it's like, oh, how am I actually going to get all of this prepared? It's also informative for us. That's one of the reasons we're increasing the number of cooking classes that we're offering this year. So that's valuable feedback as we develop our program. We also saw, as an impact, improved eating habits, increased consumption and diversity of vegetables. And so this is a little bit hard to read, but the green, the dark green and the light green are either strongly agree or somewhat agree. So did they eat more different types of vegetables? A lot agreed, and also ate more fresh vegetables overall. People agreed with that. This was just sort of fun. It was a bit of a word cloud, either vegetables that they had tried for the first time this year or a vegetable that they had learned a different way to prepare. I got a kick out of the pickle in the top left. We did, as part of the sort of preservation, we did teach people how to do quick pickling, so that was sort of neat. Pesto, we introduced a lot of people to pesto. We got a lot of basil, that's one way to use it. And then improved health. And I should start, I want to kick this slide off by talking a little bit about limitations. We, in our evaluation, A, do not have the resources, but B, also we're not totally comfortable with doing rigorous medical evaluation of our participants. We're trying to be good neighbors. We're talking to people about gardens. We don't want to say, hey, how are your tomatoes going, and would you step on a scale? That's, for us, that's not the type of relationship that we have. And so we are very interested in health, and we are continuing to look at more ways to assess that. But at this point, we're talking about perceptions of health in a lot of ways, and we're getting anecdotal feedback. And at this stage, that's sort of the best that we can do. So 71% of participants did report that they definitely felt healthier because of Homegrown, which is just great for us to hear. I mean, if they said, I don't, that would be feedback for us, for sure. And just a few quotes. I looked for ways to use the produce each day, which led to eating more vegetables. I know that feeling in my garden when something's right. It's, okay, how do I use it? The way my body felt after eating my salads with more fresh ingredients really made a difference. So that's great to hear. Energy level is better. Feeling like I accomplished something when I pick and eat vegetables. So it's all anecdotal, but we are hearing this consistently, and we know that those are the kinds of relationships we want to continue to foster. We also look a bit at extended impact. And because we are not going to put a garden in everybody's yard. Not everyone wants to be a gardener. Not everyone's at a place in their life where they're ready to have a garden. But we know that these gardens impact more than just the people who live at a particular home. For instance, when we first started the program, we were interested in finding parents with young children. And especially in the first year, and we've gotten more now, but we've had some difficulty. If you're a parent with young children, you have a lot of priorities in your life, and not all of them, you need to prioritize. But we ended up with a lot of seniors who were retired, but looked after their grandkids several days a week, if not every day after school. And so we saw that garden, they might have listed no children living at home, but actually a lot of kids were interacting with that garden. And so we saw the average household size is 2.5. People shared their produce with a lot of different people, and 314 different people ate produce from garden in 2015. We also saw the vast majority of gardeners had help caring for their gardens, so there's educational components there. And I don't think we've talked enough about that. I grew up learning to garden by watching my parents. And it wasn't that I saw a TV show about it, it wasn't necessarily that I learned it at school, I saw it from the person who mattered most to me in my life. And being able to learn gardening from those people in your life who are your role models is, for us, I think, an essential way to teach gardening to people. And so by putting it in people's backyards, and we love community gardens, we love school gardens, those are wonderful places of education too, but there is something about the privacy of home that also has great value. We also saw that nearly all gardeners reported they had talked with their neighbors around or about their garden, and 77% gave vegetables to a neighbor. So just all the good feelings you get by being able to share your extra zucchini with a neighbor, we're seeing that happening at Homewood too.
So we'll finish off here with just a couple pictures of some more of our gardens. This is a before and after photo at the Owenses, which are a couple that have a in-home daycare center. And we've worked with a few in-home daycares and would like to work with more. They've been a great partner for us. This daycare center in particular, they usually have about 10 to 12 kids with them over the summer months. And they've done an awesome job of getting the kids out into the garden and cooking with them and having them help harvest. So this has been a fun garden to be involved with. And just a few more photos of our gardens and our gardeners. There's, like I said before, a wide variety of types of people that are in the program. The top left there are some 3-year-olds at another home daycare center, which they love to water in particular. But it's fun because they're there all summer and they're before school age, but they're still able to interact with the garden. We have seniors and young families, so all sorts of different types of people in the gardens. And in the bottom left there, we had 2 neighbors, 2 women who live in the same apartment building, and they both applied, and so they end up doing a lot of gardening together as well. So I think, yes, that's all we have. Wow.
I just want to say one other thing. So this is, we've really been Charity's program over the last 3 years. Since Charity came on spring of 2013, as we said, okay, we're getting this started, but we don't know what it is yet. And so she has really nurtured this into what you see today over these past few years. Unfortunately, we found out recently she's starting the next chapter of her life and moving with her husband to Chicago this spring. So 2 things. This is our first public presentation since we learned that news. So I did want to just take an opportunity to publicly thank her for all the work she's done. And also, with our sort of ecology-minded folks here, you know that when a big tree falls in the forest, it's a sad day, but it's also an opportunity for others to fill in and take their place. And so We are actively recruiting for Charity's position right now. We are excited for the future of the program, so I ask you to dig deep into your own networks, find people who love the earth, who are passionate, and we'd love to interview them, because we're excited where this program's going and to continue the legacy. And with that, we're happy to take questions.
Do you do any work with helping people identify edible weeds that might come up in their garden? Instead of just throwing them away, they can use the dandelions and so on. Do you do any of that?
Yeah, a little bit. We haven't done a whole lot of that, but definitely, I actually hear about that a lot from the older people in our program, talking about eating dandelion greens and purslane and things like that. But in general, the beds have been, we sort of bring in that weed-free soil to start out, so they don't have a lot of weeds the first year at least. But
Yeah, what do they do with the bed after the first year? Do they cover it with the compost from the previous year's, leaves and things? Or?
yeah, so we've always done a class in the fall about getting ready for winter, just covering, pulling everything out and putting leaves on top of the bed, and then we come back in the spring and add compost for them. Yeah.
It's fabulous what you're doing, and that you included also daffodil bulbs. Just, it's so moving to bring beauty into the neighborhood like that. I have two questions. We know some people in East Liberty who want to start gardens in their yard, but they've never gardened before. Can people from other neighborhoods become members or receive some kind of education or seeds or something as a first question?
So anybody is welcome to our monthly garden club meetings, and so that's certainly available. Membership and access to raised beds at this point is strictly Homewood, and that's due to our funding source and sort of just how we have to focus. We actually have like Charity has a website she goes to like plug in addresses, and like it's painful when someone's just over the border, but right now we are focused just on Homewood with the hopes of expanding into the future, and we would love to build on our strong edges, and so we do have people who have, oh, my sister lives in Larimer, or my cousin's over in Lincoln Leamington, and so our hope would be to kind of expand outward.
That was my second question. Great.
So on compost, how often is that reusable? Like, what's the general cycle? So you throw something away, and then after X amount of time, you can start growing it.
It's a good question for which I will not have a perfect answer for you.
General.
Yeah, so if you're doing composting really kind of professionally in your backyard, you could turn something over. Does anyone, I've heard, well, actually, Jeff, will you answer that question?
Jim might know better than me, but I think when it smells good.
So, it could be like, I've heard rumors that someone, could turn compost around in 3 to 4 weeks. In my backyard, I don't do it that professionally, and I'll go a whole season.
So like a year.
A year, yeah.
And then you can grow in it.
And then you can grow in it, yeah. Mm-hmm. But people who are doing it much more actively could get a couple of rounds of compost in a season.
Okay, I'm sorry, but okay, so say a year.
Yeah.
Say a year. If you're using the materials in which you're growing, can it then be faster? Because it's now more organic, like you're using, if you're cutting up pineapple, just saying you're growing pineapple, I'm seeing pineapple right now.
Yeah.
But that's what I throw away in a bag, but if I was throwing it away in my compost pile, would it turn over quicker?
So, go ahead.
The city wants composting to be enclosed so that there's no, attracting rats and stuff. You can compost, if you're enclosed, a wide variety of things. And by enclosed, I don't mean necessarily that you need a lid on top. But if you have a large, Jeff is an expert, but if you have a larger, there's something called thermophilic or heat, hot composting. It is much faster. And if you have a larger area, not these small composters that people know There are, you can improvise, or you can build your own larger composter. And as long as it's, you can feed it, just grab it, let it fall by gravity, and the heat builds up and it turns over faster, and it heats up and it kills some of the pathogens. And as long as you're encouraging oxygen in there, you don't allow, and you have drainage from it, you don't allow any standing water in the bottom of it. It'll go sour, and it's much faster. You can experiment, but any organic anything that is or was alive, theoretically under the right conditions, can be composted.
Right. So there are a few ways, I think, to sort of take away from that, there are a variety of ways to compost. If you were to use the compost bin that we give away, if you were to throw something in there, the most important thing is getting a balance between sort of dry materials, browns, and sort of wetter materials, greens. And if you can sort of keep a nice balance, you can turn things over pretty fast. If it gets real dry, it doesn't really matter what's going on there, it'll sort of freeze. If it gets too wet, you get a bad environment, and that's no good either. So I'm not sure that I'm answering your question.
No, yeah, that was perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you have a garden in the ground, this doesn't work well for bins, and if you have a big enough garden and enough space, you can dig a big hole and bury your stuff, and it's amazing how fast the bacteria in the earth disintegrates that.
Yeah, that's true.
And I do that in the fall, in the winter, and in the spring, and I'll fill one hole up, and then I'll put some leaves in them. And my soil is just wonderful, and it helps the earthworms too.
You grow that in the next year.
Huh?
You grow that in the next year in the yard. If you grow on top of which that hole you.
Oh yeah, it takes maybe just a month or, it's amazing.
Yeah, you want to bury it.
You want to bury it pretty deep.
It doesn't have to have a bottom. In other words, when you feed it in the top, and the living things in the soil in the nearby area, the roots of the tree, whatever is growing nearby can come in, and you don't even have to turn it or anything. You can just let gravity take it, and the earthworms come in and.
Okay.
Fast.
All right.
Yeah.
Question up front.
You don't want to do that in a raised bed because it's
I see
such a
what I
limited
already
little
asked.
space.
Can you say a little more about your cooking efforts and how you engage folks and where you do the cooking and anything else about what you're doing?
Yeah, so cooking classes that we've done so far have been at the Homewood YMCA. They have a small kitchen there, and we also use like portable burners and to do demonstrations. For the most part, we have done sort of demonstration cooking classes, and what we would like to do more of is where people actually are participating in the cooking and cooking together, and adding in, when we've done cooking classes in the past, it's been sort of in the off season when we don't have those pressing gardening things to talk about, but that's what this year we're going to try to add some classes during the main growing season as well, and those will likely happen at Silver Lake, which Gabe talked about, where we're installing the garden that will be worked at with the Boy Scouts and senior citizens. That's a senior home, but they just have a really nice large kitchen, commercial kitchen that they're open to having other people come in and use. So that's where those will probably take place.
And do the cooking classes just teach how to use the vegetables that you're growing?
Yeah, so just different recipes on how to use things that will be in season this summer. I think another thing that we've talked about is teaching methods of cooking, so like a stir fry, you know, and then you can teach sort of a base recipe where you can throw in whatever you're getting out of your garden at the moment too.
You mentioned that you did like a test garden here, so I was just wondering, what is like the standard issue plants that you give people? Is there something like everybody gets the same things, or is it like I like tomatoes and somebody else likes whatever?
Yeah, people get to pick whatever they want. So we have a list of vegetables that we have available, and then once people apply to the program, we go out and do a site visit before we actually build the garden. And at that point, we talk about what they want to grow. They sort of pick from the list. They usually choose about 10 different things. But yeah, it's all across the board. Lots of tomatoes and greens, beets, and all sorts of vegetables.
Can the public buy those, come in and buy those vegetables?
We don't sell vegetables
Oh, you
at the
just have
moment,
enough
just
for
the
your garden.
seedling sales, yeah.
Are your, who's helping you clean up these beds? Is it volunteers? Or is it staff members? Both?
Yeah, so the beds belong to the homeowner or whoever lives there. So it's sort of their responsibility to take care of them and keep them up. We have been, as we go back to deliver compost in the spring, if there's still, some weeds or some things left over, we help clean them out sort of that first year and work with them. But yeah, in general, it belongs to them, so it's up to the residents to maintain.
But I should say that with all the compost deliveries, it's a busy time of year, and so extra hands are needed. So if anyone's interested in volunteering,
Yeah, you were talking about maybe doing some pickling, and I noticed on your data, they have the same problem a lot of gardeners do, have a lot of stuff. What are we going to do with it? And I'm wondering if you've done much more than the pickling topic in terms of how do you preserve foods so that you can not have that huge bar that you can have people say, well, I'm freezing these and I'm drying these and I'm things like that. Have you added that
you
into
can answer that better than me.
Well, we have done, Gabe taught a canning class last year, and talked about freezing, and every year we've talked some about storage of fresh vegetables, so also just how to properly store things so they last the longest, if they need to be in the fridge or on the counter or however, and a little bit of preservation, but we haven't done a lot of that, but that is something people have asked about, so I think would probably be good to talk more about in the future.
Can you tell me what your funding source is? You talk about a lot.
Yeah, sure. We're funded right now by the Homewood Foundation.
Okay. So is that going to expand into those other neighborhoods you
No.
mentioned?
Yeah. So we the first 2 years we had some small funding, but primarily we were self-funded. At the fall of 2014, we received funding from Homewood for 3 years to take our total number of gardens to over 200. So we are starting the second year of that funding. So we'll do a full year here, and then we'll do we're hoping to do 60 this season, and another 60 next season, and then our Hellman money runs out.
So, can I ask what the large scheme or vision is for this community? Because obviously, at least to some of us in the room, we want our local community to be able to be as productive as possible, so we want to see this proliferation of gardens. So, do you see that as a strategic plan over, 4 years, 5 years?
When you say community, what?
Well, I see an integration of communities. Obviously, Homewood is important. There's a project going on in Hazelwood. Every community needs a project. It's a wonderful, necessary relationship to the earth and to one another. Because we're leaving fossil fuels, our dependence, it'll be more important that we're producing more locally. Everyone who can take care of those gardens, in their own home is ideal, I suppose, in some ways. So this is a movement.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you see it growing? And do you have a plan for contributing to that speed?
So, do you mind if I attempt? Okay, so, the short, maybe. So, absolutely, we want everyone to have a backyard garden. If anyone here wants advice on backyard gardening, you've got my cards. I'm happy to lend advice. We want people gardening in their backyard. Part of what I love about working for Phipps is that we get to be kind of a go-to resource for people around gardening, and I am a passionate vegetable gardener. So that's something I would love every single person to have, whether it be a pot on a windowsill or a half acre, have some vegetables growing. And so that is the vision. as far as exactly what that looks like, what works at scale, we're learning the lessons of that right now. Does it make sense to do the number we're doing? Do we need to do twice that many? Can we do half that many and have a thriving garden community? What is sort of the educational model that will enable the most people to be able to grow as effectively as possible? Those are questions we ask ourselves. I don't have an answer today for exactly what that is, but I'm glad you're asking it because it's something that certainly we care about also.
Sort of along the same lines, have you noticed, I guess, since you've only been in 3 years, only like 10 gardeners have not been part of the program this last year, so maybe it's not enough to tell. But is there a lot of drop off once you step away? Do they abandon their garden? I mean, there's only 10 at this point. It's not much.
It's like the biggest question we've been asking ourselves. So I'm glad that you asked it. So you may know the numbers better than me. Charity did call every gardener from that first year. You're right, it was just 10 last year who weren't getting active support from us. How many were still gardening? 8. So for us, if we get 80% for the rest of this program, I'll be a mile high. I think that's a really good success rate. I will also say that my sense is that the first 10 who signed up were early adopters and they were very excited. And so now with that said, we've also improved our program, we've improved our education, so there have been improvements to the program, but I think the first 10 who signed up were pretty special in a lot of ways. Part of what we're looking at with our membership, rolling that out, trying to incentivize participation, trying to make access to seedlings as easy as possible, streamlining how we're communicating to them. We're putting out a newsletter this year that will come out seasonally. So the people are it's more in their heads, they're getting timely garden information. We're hoping all these build up to help keep that number as high as possible. We feel really lucky that it started with 10 last year that we could learn from, and we did get feedback from those 10. This year will be 20, and so we'll sort of be able to gauge that a little bit more, but we're glad to have 2 years to sort of self-assess before it becomes 60 and 120 and all of that, because absolutely, I don't expect it. Someone may do it for 2 years and say, you know what, it's just not for me, or my priorities have changed, and that's okay. It's their garden. But we want to keep barriers low and keep excitement as high as possible, and so we're trying to self-learn as much as we can.
I think on that note, I'm going to ask you all to join me in congratulating you on a very successful program. Wishing you